everyone. So sorry I'm late. I know I always say that every time, don't I? So I see that the comment section is already going a little bit crazy today. So um, hello everyone. I'm going to go through and I see that Janet is here. And Janet has graciously agreed to be a moderator for these live streams. You'll see the little blue wrench by her name. So it turns out that I was able to set that up. um, so Janet is just going to kind of keep an eye out for things for me, or keep an eye on things for me. Watch for people who come in and want to make some interesting comments. We've had a few colorful characters over the last couple live streams, so Janet is going to help to just moderate, make sure that the comment section is staying positive and appropriate, and that it's not being filled up with a bunch of political propaganda. I don't know what to call it. So thank you everyone for joining. You always get them. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. And the bigger the channel gets too, the more of those you're going to get. So I realize that. All right. So let's just dig in. I will say hi to people as I go along. So I see Dale is here. Cockney Rebels here. Canal Libre. I don't know. I can't say your name. Samuel's here. Obviously Janet's here. So I will go through. I will say hi to everyone as I go along, and I will try to get through all of your questions today. And I'll try to be I'll keep things moving along. All right. So Dale, I understand the physiology of how to reach a high note, and took singing lessons for 11 years. Is the only way to get real practice by having an instructor? I don't know if you saw my video, I think it was the last video I put out last week, where I talked about, I asked the question, can you learn how to sing without a singing teacher? I don't think that is having a singing teacher is the only way. I do think that if you've got a good singing teacher, you'll get there faster, and you'll probably have fewer frustrations along the way. Because that teacher is going to be able to give you exercises and give you guidance and tips, and be able to listen to what you're doing and be able to assess that on a functional level. What is happening with your coordination, for better or for worse? And that's really the role of the singing teacher. Obviously, ultimately, the learning process is something that you have to do. You have to be able to physically make things happen. We can't do that for you at all. So I think it is not the only way for you to learn how to do that, but definitely it could help. If you're having real issues with your upper range, a singing teacher will be able to tell you what's going on, and hopefully be able to guide you in getting there faster. But the key to singing in the upper range, it depends on how you're singing, really, because there's the classical way of singing, with the larynx a little bit more stable, and your resonance is tuned differently. And then there's the more, we'll say, CCM or contemporary way of singing the upper range, where the larynx is allowed to rise, and you're able to use a lot of like twang and bright sounds and that sort of thing. But the key to me, I think, so much of it is up here. Sorry, I'm like, okay, I raced to get here. So much of it is up here, I think. So much of it is how we think about high pitches, how we think about the upper range. I know I hear singers all the time, you see it in their faces when they start to approach a high note. There's this look of panic in their faces. And as soon as they start to think in an unproductive manner about the higher pitch, then they throttle their tone and what have you. So some of it is really working out, I'll say the confidence, even though you may not be able to sing the notes yet, but just trusting that your instrument knows how to do that. Learning to be able to sing, learning to be able to stretch the vocal folds, I think, is really important. So sirens on the lip trills, or like lip bubbles or tongue tip trills, different kinds of sounds that really encourage the instrument to just kind of stretch and let the vocal folds thin. Those are going to be really important. I will say encouraging enough space inside the throat. But again, as I said earlier, there are some techniques that don't require a lot of space inside the throat. You can have the larynx high, and you can have the pharyngeal walls a little bit more dilated, and that's okay. It's not unhealthy. unless it's accompanied by feelings of constriction or strain or pain, in which case then there's an imbalance somewhere along there. So there's breath that you have to think about. There's a lot of little things that you have to coordinate. Yeah. So I'm not sure. I don't think I've really been able to answer that question directly, but I think you don't always need an instructor, but I do think that an instructor will help considerably and will speed up that process of learning. Cockney, hi, nice to see you. Dale, okay, maybe this is a continuation of your question. I need to just catch my breath a little bit. Okay, what are the best vocal exercises when going for a big sound in the higher part of the register to make the projection of the voice as long as possible in an operatic context? Ooh, that's a really good one. So I don't really teach a lot of opera. When I work with opera singers, which I do, I'm usually helping them through voice difficulties and such. And I know more of the theory behind things like resonance tuning. So in classical singing, because you have a need to sing over the musical accompaniment without amplification, you don't usually have a microphone, you have to make adjustments to your resonance in order to maximize that carrying potential of your voice. You're also using, I'm going to say, pretty high subglottal pressures, not overly high. That's really important. There's also a lot of vocal effort here, resisting that air pressure. Those create the louder sounds. But then there's also what happens above the glottis. There's that resonance tuning that happens. For example, we know that, it's still kind of theorized that a slight narrowing of the laryngeal tube right above the vocal folds, the epilaryngeal tube, is responsible for those high frequencies that give us the singer's formant, for example, that clustering of the third, fourth, and fifth formants. So there's resonance frequencies of the vocal tract, and that happens to be a frequency range that 3,000 hertz, approximately 3,000 hertz range, happens to be a frequency range where the human ear is most sensitive. So that helps a lot with the tuning. It's not just about sheer power. It's not just about sheer volume. It's interesting. I attended the National Association of Teachers of Singing conference in Las Vegas in June, and I was surrounded by several sopranos. And as I was listening to them, and they're professionals, they work in opera houses and such, and it was amazing how most of them did not have incredibly large voices, but they work as professionals in classical singing. Now, I've worked with some classical singers, especially spinto sopranos, who have these crazy, huge, huge, huge voices, but not all do. And when they don't have these big voices, when they're more of a lyric instrument, they learn to tune their resonance more effectively for that bigger output. But it's not about sheer brute force to get those sounds. Some of that comes from that, what is it, voce di strega in the Italian. Excuse my Italian, but that witch's voice. That we call it twang, right? And when we do that, the twang, it raises the larynx a little bit. But aiming for just that brightness, that ring in the tone, is really, really important. As far as exercises, there's a Burton Coffin exercise that I do with my students where there's nothing magical about the exercise except that it has some vowel changes built in. It's just a 4-note scale, and in that, what we're focusing on is the breath and the vowel and the ring, because those 3 factors create this really, really powerful, we'll say, upper mixed voice, but the mix is a lot heavier and fuller. And so the breath is really important. You need to make sure that you're connecting well with the breath, because otherwise you're going to try to support from here. And then getting this feeling of, I'll call it frontal buzz, where it feels like we're not getting all the push from in here. We're feeling almost like the voice starts here, even though we know it doesn't really. And then getting the vowel right, making sure that we're singing the vowel that we think we're singing, and then making sure that we're singing the right vowel for the pitch. And that helps the instrument to operate really efficiently, and it helps us to be able to tune our resonances appropriately for those pitches. So I would just say working smarter, not harder, is really the most important thing. So making use of the resonance, I think, is really critical, but breath and all that good stuff too. So hello, hello to you. Let's see. I will not make it to the stream. Oh, Samuel, oh, you're on an airplane. Wow. Where are you flying to? I hope you're doing awesome. Can I ask you for the advice or pointers on how to do messa di voce in zona di passaggio? In that zone by transition is not smooth enough. Are you talking about like transitioning between registers? Like if you're sitting, because usually a messa di voce is on a single pitch where you swell the note from, like let's say piano dynamic to forte, and then back down to, you bring it back down to piano. Usually you stretch that over a few measures. And if you're doing it through the zona di passaggio, then it becomes a little bit tricky because you probably have to pay attention to what you're doing with the vowel. Um, and again, remember I said that, the vowel that you choose, I've said this before in a previous video, that the vowel that we're singing to some extent determines the register. Now, or registration. We'll say registration. I know Ken Bozeman and Ian Howell would get on my case about saying register there. But so if we're talking registration, it's both a physiological and an acoustical phenomenon. And if we're singing a vowel with, let's say, a low first formant, like an E or an U on a given pitch, that vowel will already have turned over acoustically speaking and would be in what we call like closed timbre. Let's say middle C. We're just gonna kind of use a generic thing here. But if you sing an O on that same pitch or an ah, those vowels haven't yet turned over, let's say. So in which case you've got those O's and ahs that are still in open timbre, and the other vowels are in closed timbre, and that creates this really stark difference between those vowels. And so it's kind of hard to do that in this kind of setting, because I would have to really listen to what you're talking about and what's going on. But it's possible it's a whole bunch of things like resonance. Just maybe you're not tuning your resonance effectively for those pitches, but also it could be breath. Oftentimes I hear singers kind of pulling back too much with the breath as they transition into the lighter mechanism, and then kind of really digging in as they transition back into the lower mechanism or the heavier mechanism, we'll say. So it could be a combination of muscle and acoustics, so and breath too as well. That's kind of superfluous. I can't talk today at all. Okay. Let's see. Samuel, say, any little thing which has helped you to connect your voice through could help. Thank you for all you do. Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah. So the things with, honestly, that Bergen coffin exercise is just it's just a 4-note scale, and there's an E and an I at the top, and then we do it again on like a back vowel series, which is oo, o. You try to get that frontal buzz. I'm not warmed up, so my voice is on. And I just had ice cream with chocolate in it too. That's like the worst thing I could do. But it's so good. It's from this local farm. All right. It's so bad on so many levels, I know. But yeah, so, and then you move up the scale, and as you get to a certain point, I find guys generally around G, they kind of, we usually switch the vowels. So the E, I series becomes I, A, and then the U, O series becomes good luck, and what we're doing basically is we're just fiddling around with the first formants of the vowel. So when we put the vowel changes, we're encouraging this, we'll say, mixed voice, so that you're staying in this kind of heavier mechanism. I know that you're asking about the voce di messa di voce. Sorry about that. Can't focus today. My kids are like outside, like making a bunch of noise. All right. So I know you're asking about that specifically, but that's the kind of thing that I think what that does is it bridges the registers. It helps with that transition, because you start getting all those factors in place. You start getting the breath. You start getting the ring in the tone, which is critical to have across all the different vowels, and you start getting the registration right in terms of the vowels. You start singing the vowel that you think you're singing, and you're singing the right vowel for the pitch. So I think that that's kind of critical. I know it sounds like it's a little bit of an abstract idea in some ways, but it's really actually very practical. Um, and there's a kind of a method to it. There's a science to it that if you get that right, and you should be able to get, you should be able to get some more balance in that range. I'm sorry, I'm so distracted today. Oh, it feels like it's been forever. It feels like it's been more than a month since we've done this live stream. So I do 2 to 3 live streams a week on SingWise Academy. They're Facebook lives. So I'm doing it all the time, and I feel like it's been so long since I've done anything on YouTube. I've been kind of a little bit shyer over the last little while with YouTube. So, and Janet, hello. Thank you so much for moderating. Let's see. I'm still here, but soon Stewardess will have to turn off the phone. I'm assuming by now she has already. You always get PG. I don't know what that means, Cockney Rebel. What time is it in Canada now? Well, so I'm not in Canada. I am Canadian, but I'm in the U.S. I'm about an hour northwest of Boston, and it is now 4:19 p.m. So yeah, we usually start at 4 o'clock in Eastern time. That's the time zone that I'm in, and makes your life a lot bloody harder if you try and get it alone. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I understand. I always say that I understand that there are circumstances sometimes that make it really difficult for us to be able to afford singing lessons or to be able to manage them. I've worked with some students who live in kind of remote areas of different countries where they literally have no singing teachers within 50 miles, 100 miles from them, and so they end up finding me or some other singing teacher online, for example. But it's hard. It's hard when you don't have the information. It's hard when you don't have that one-on-one feedback. I think that's the most critical thing that a singing teacher provides is that feedback, because if you get a good singing teacher, we know what to listen for, and we know how to interpret the sounds that we're hearing. We know how to figure out what it is what's happening on a functional level. So we don't just listen purely on an aesthetics level. Like, we're not listening to the veneer. We're looking at how stable is that sound underneath it. How sturdy is that table or that piece of furniture? And, is it sustainable over time? Is it healthy? Is it ultimately going to free you up? Is it going to enable you to do more with your voice beyond this? Or is it going to be limiting? Is it going to be unhealthy? And that's what I think a singing teacher's first responsibility, I think, is in hearing a student and helping along the way. But then there's also, one of the really important things, just the encouragement. So I joined this group recently, and just knowing that you had that help, and I got some help with something completely different from singing. And as soon as I booked the appointment, there was this sense of like relief and hopefulness that came over me that I hadn't had before. Because I'm going to start crying because sometimes we feel isolated. Sometimes we feel like we're alone in this, and we don't know how to help ourselves. We don't know, we feel like we're kind of treading water a little bit, and it just seems constantly like we're stuck in one place. And as soon as we start to get that help, we start to ask ourselves, like, what took us so long? Why did we take so long to actually get that help that we needed? But yeah, it's tough to go it alone. I think so. I mean, even singing teachers, I'm trying to figure out a way myself to work with a singing teacher that I've been wanting to work with for a few years, actually. And she's a little bit far away, so I have to figure that out. And I want to do in person in studio lessons with her for a lot of reasons. Even though I'm okay with online, I have done online lessons. And I want to, I need to be able to find a way to afford that. So, I'm trying to actively make that happen. And that's the thing too. If you can't afford singing lessons, but you really, really want them, you can find a way. You can find it. We will make it happen when there's something that we really, 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 really want. And when there's something that we need, we find a way to get it for ourselves. And so, you know, I'm actively working on trying to figure out how to get that for myself because I would love to work with a singing teacher. So, yeah, we all need help. We all need guidance along the way. Hi, Maddie. Nice to see you. And she says hi to Janet. Um, Now, forgive me if I mispronounce this. Jenilson Ferreira. Hello from Brazil. I'm a home singer, 69 years old. I'm assuming you sing around the house, just kind of for your own pleasure. Good health. What kind of special care should I have to make progress? I take weekly classes. Oh, you do take weekly classes. Um, I'm not really sure what you mean by special cares exactly. Are you talking about like vocal hygiene practices, like getting enough sleep and hydrating well, and you know, just being gentle with your voice, watching the medications, making sure you have your health concerns under control, whether it's reflux or you know, some other health issue, making sure that you've got those symptoms under control, asthma, you know, watching the kinds of things you eat and drink, caffeine, which is a diuretic, and things like that. I don't know if you're talking about vocal hygiene or just general like vocal hygiene practices when it comes to actual singing. But yeah, just, you know, taking good care of yourself and making sure that you are practicing on a regular basis and practicing the right things in the right way. That's really critical as well. Mitchell, push out lower abdominal at onset or let them come in towards the end of the phrase. I've been instructed both ways. Oh, it's so confusing. I know. So yeah, I've I've definitely I see merit in a few of those, but if you I always try to go back more to, I guess, what's natural, the natural movement of the abdominal wall when we're breathing. We make adjustments for singing because we need to. The demands of singing far exceed those of speech. So, you know, we're singing higher, we're holding our notes and phrases out longer, you know, and we're singing louder, more loudly. And so we have to make changes to how we breathe. But I don't think that we necessarily need to completely abandon the natural movements of our breath musculature and breath management system. So I don't like the whole push out idea. However, when a singer tends to lock the solar plexus, I will sometimes have them put like two fingers right there. I don't even know if you can see me because, let's see. There we go. The comments are down here and then my video is up here. So yeah, right here in this section right here where the solar plexus is, right at the very, very bottom of the sternum, the breastbone. And sometimes what I'll do is have the singer just kind of slightly put a little bit of outward pressure against those two fingers. So you're not pushing the fingers in and it's not forceful. It's just a little bit of a little pop, we'll say, when they tend to lock the solar plexus, especially in the upper range. It can work really effectively for singers who do tend to lock the solar plexus, but also who tend to like really, really force and push their upper notes. But I don't recommend that for everybody. And then the whole out thing, I know it's so confusing because I mean, I've had teachers do the same thing with me where they'll take a book and they'll put it across the, you know, epigastrium, that area between the belly button and the sternum, put it there, and the idea is to kind of push out. The problem with doing that, though, is that it places the musculature in kind of, I don't know, an abnormal position. And again, it's not really allowing the body to kind of coordinate as it otherwise would naturally. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, I love the idea of lowering subglottal pressures when they're too high, but to me, just keeping a slight expansion of the ribs here laterally is sufficient to keep those subglottal pressures at bay I guess to mitigate the subglottal pressures. And I think that's enough, but the whole idea of pushing out doesn't make sense. What it does is it actually just puts more pressure against the abdominal cavity. So you're just going to be getting more of a push out. And then it overly distends the abdominal wall. Then it places all those muscles in kind of a bad position, I guess you'll say, for supporting. So I just say that, you know, it's a good idea to get that lateral expansion, and then retain that for at least part of the phrase, but not force it. Don't ever hold out the ribs at all costs just to try to do it. I think that it's a good idea just to kind of, some people call it the inspiratory hold, where you get the posture of inhalation and you're kind of, I don't like the word holding, honestly. You're just kind of encouraging or discouraging, I guess, that really immediate and forceful thrusting in and collapse of the ribs. But you do let it happen. It needs to happen. And in order to keep the subglottal pressures up to where we need them to be, we need to be able to allow those ribs at some point to come in, the abdominal wall to come in, not forcefully. I'm sorry, my brain is not working. I'm going to stop for a second. I'm going to regroup. I'm going to take some water. So I've been working. We're trying to do a lot of purging in our house and trying to get rid of stuff because we're full to the brim in here in this little house. And so I just spent 3.5 hours after church doing that. So, all right. So yeah, Mitchell, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I think it's a good idea to keep some of the rib expansion, but I wouldn't say pushing out. I don't call it pushing out. You've inhaled and you've already expanded laterally, and just making sure that when you initiate the phrase, you're not going and collapsing everything really forcefully and quickly. But again, as the subglottal pressures, if you want to keep the subglottal pressures consistent, and as the lung volume starts to decrease, so you get less air in your lungs, but you want to maintain the same pressure, you have to let the ribs come in. You have to let the abdominal wall come in, but it's not really like a forceful thrusting kind of thing, and I don't think it's a good idea to force the abdominal wall out either. This is kind of fun having Janet be a moderator. I know she's not having to say or do a whole lot. Oh man, am I really that far behind? Sorry guys. Okay, I'm going to stop talking. Not really. I'm not really going to stop talking. Okay. Cockney Rebel. I spend most of the time singing in falsetto, as you know, because I love that particular sound of my voice. But how do I know what female range my falsetto register corresponds to, please? I mean, well, are we talking voice part like choir, or are we talking voice classification? So, if your falsetto is a lot in the, let's say, I'm going to say E4 to E5 range, I'd say that's kind of your mezzo. That's the sweet spot for we mezzos. So that I would say that's probably where you are for the most part. But then if soprano, I would say it's more from let's say G to G. It's just a little bit higher. I don't know if that helps at all, but only most of the time I still tend to treat my natural voice and falsetto register as two completely separate ranges. I mean, well, yeah, they're not. There's overlap, definitely. But yeah, the natural voice. I don't know if you're referring to head voice or mixed voice or what have you. But there's always overlap between registers. It's not always one or the other. Moreno Ming Na. I don't know if you saw one of my videos. I have an exercise Ming Na. I haven't done that exercise in a long time, actually. Hi, Matt. Nice to see you. I know I owe you a response to the question that you posted, I think, yesterday on the Sing Wise Facebook page. That you're here. Nice to have you here. Jason, hello. Hola. Cockney, yep, made it. Everybody's chatting. Very nice. Matt, question. My lowest comfort note that I know of is G1. So that's 2.5 octaves below middle C. So the one below middle C is G3, and then there's G2, and then there's G1. All right, so that's definitely on the lower end, but I can sing as low as C1 and C#1 on good days. How do you make more good days? And just practice all of it. Honestly, I think that as this was my own experience, was as you gain some more technical control of your instrument, you will have more and more good days. And then what will happen is when you're having a bad day, people won't notice it as much as you do. I definitely noticed that for myself, that my voice was very, very volatile, very unpredictable from day to day. I never knew what was going to come out of my mouth, to be honest with you. I never knew if I was going to have control of it. And then over the years, I started to gain more technical control. And I started being able to rely on my instrument more and to be able to make it do the things that I wanted to do when I wanted it to do them. And then I noticed that now, you know, when I have an off day, like I feel it, I'm aware of it, but the average person listening probably wouldn't even know. They probably wouldn't know unless they were like intimately familiar with my voice. So I think that is really the key. It's practice, you know, just building that technical security into your technique. Superfluous again. All right, building that security into your technique, that consistency. And then over time, it does really just become. But I know for you, Matt, that you're still trying to explore your voice and you're still trying to figure out what your voice type is. And I know you spent a lot of time working on the upper range and now you're kind of focusing on the lower range again. So, you know, you haven't really settled into your voice type and the repertoire and that sort of thing yet, too. So, but once you do that, you will probably find that you're able to get more consistency once you really get to know your voice and what it's meant to be. I think that will really help a lot. I mean, what I eat. Okay. Yeah, what you eat. Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're somebody who is definitely affected a lot by things that you eat, that will make a difference, definitely from day to day. Fahim, nice to see you. I'm doing okay, a little stressed out, got lots going on, but other than that, happy to see you here. That's really great of you to join us. Jason, in my chest voice, my suprahyoid muscles are finally relaxed. Oh, that's good. However, the moment I enter falsetto, the the muscles tense. Let's see. All right, semi-release the tension in falsetto. My throat constrictors tense. Can't talk. Sorry. Release the tension in falsetto. My throat constrictors tense. So I'm wondering if the way that you're creating falsetto is actually with some tension. So oftentimes what I'll hear is singers in falsetto where they actually have like it's almost like this like underneath the sound. That's kind of like a false vocal fold constriction and narrowing all the way up the vocal tract, really, when you do that. It's like I always say, like the water, you know, the guy in the desert, right? Um, and you get the sound in there, and it's got like this squeeze, this supraglottal squeeze. And I'm wondering if your falsetto is made like that. I know a lot of singers make their falsetto that way, and so it's made with a lot of muscle tension. And then you try to release it, yeah, and it's like throat constrictors, yeah. So it sounds to me like there's something going on where if you try to release that tension, then something else constricts because it's trying to support the tone. So it could be that you're not actually also connecting well enough with your breath, and that will play a big role, I think, in what's going on if there's an imbalance with your breath and your phonation, like what's happening here. Also resonance too, but I mean, without hearing you, I can't know exactly what's going on. But you know, feel free to give me more information, to send me samples as well on the Singwise Facebook page, or you can email me at karyn@singwise.com. That would be fine. Let's see. Oh, Michael. I'm assuming it's not pronounced Michael, but let me know otherwise. When stopping the tone, the pitch is going down. So I'm actually posting a video this coming week on the release of the tone. I just have to finish editing it. I barely started editing it, to be honest, but I recorded it 2 weeks ago. The pitch is going down. With glissando, it is easier to stop the tone. I found out it is easier to stop the tone thinking it under the lips. Why is this? I don't know what you mean exactly by under the lips. Are you talking like thinking here, like projecting the tone here? I'm not sure what that means exactly, but I suspect, and this is what I find with a lot of singers, is that if the pitch is going a little bit, so when stopping the tone, the pitch is going down. I suspect that it means that you have what I would call a soft release of the tone. So you're not, instead of release, so the vocal folds, let's say these are the vocal folds, right? When we release the tone, we're supposed to bring them fully apart back to their inhale posture, ideally, right? So what happens when singers have a soft release of the tone is they're kind of just doing this. It just kind of happens like sort of a little bit more sluggishly than that nice precise opening that we want to have. And so when you get that, what happens is in that moment as the vocal folds start to come apart and the subglottal pressures start to drop, the pitch goes down a little bit. So there's a little bit of a connection between pitch and subglottal pressure. And likewise, if you had like a hard release of the tone, you'd be pressing the vocal folds together. And that moment where the vocal folds start pressing more and the subglottal pressure starts to rise, but there's still airflow through the vocal folds, through the glottis, or past the vocal folds, is you will get a sharpening of the pitch. So it's the opposite that happens. So I suspect that that's what you're doing, is you're probably starting to make the adjustments for the release of the tone a little prematurely and not precisely and quickly enough. Could be wrong, but that's generally what I observe. So the solution that I usually propose for that is to when you have a soft release of the tone, is to just make sure that you're living in the moment, you're staying with that pitch. And that's really important, because oftentimes what happens is we're kind of thinking ahead. We're thinking to the next phrase. We're thinking, we're kind of thinking about the sound. Or I find sometimes we get kind of self-conscious in that moment, and we just want it to end. A lot of singers will prematurely cut off notes, for example. They're supposed to be sustained for a whole measure, let's say, and they're cutting them off at like half a measure. That happens too, but also just learning to be able to kind of, make sure you sustain that tone, like practice drilling it. Just making sure that you're drilling that onset, release. And then every time you do the release, inhale. Back to the inhale posture. You don't have to literally inhale, but even taking a tiny, tiny inhale will get the vocal folds to come apart nice and fully and set you up for the next onset of sound. Hopefully that helps. But yeah, if that video is coming out, you'll see what I'm talking about, I think. Let's see, Jason. Then when my throat constricts, doesn't feel tense. Feel hoarse. So then when my throat constrictors don't tense, I feel hoarse. Yeah, Jason, there's something going on. Again, I would have to hear you to know what's going on exactly, but you're talking about falsetto primarily. So I wonder again if there's something going on with false vocal folds, and also with just a general imbalance in with the air and the glottal closure mechanism and the resistance there. There's something going on that is causing this kind of imbalance and tension, because it really shouldn't be there. So I suspect that does your falsetto sound kind of like raspy as well, or does it just sound just kind of like girly? That would be interesting. Like, you're able to get the falsetto sounding pretty clear and undistorted. Falsetto by nature has a little bit of an air leak in there, but a lot of singers can create it with more of like a whoop timbre. Woohoo! That kind of clarity. Can you get the whoop timbre? Can you sing with that kind of tone? Excuse me. All right, Ansley. Hi, nice to see you. Have you been here before? Forgive me if you were here last time and I don't remember. Some of you are regulars, and so I recognize all your names. Excuse me. I'm trying out for ABC's reboot of American Idol this week. Wow. Yeah, that's exciting. I'm performing Landslide by Fleetwood Mac. I'm working on coloring the vowels appropriate to the style of the song. Yeah, well, good luck to you. Yeah, I mean, do you usually sing in that style? Because that would be interesting to see if you're kind of stepping outside your comfort zone a little bit vocally. But yeah, good luck. That's it's a tough thing. Excuse me. My allergy stuff. Yeah, these. I don't know if Dr. Dan is listening at all, but I know he posted that video on the evils of American Idol and other such shows. But they're hard. You know, it's a lot of work and it's hard to get in them, and not to discourage you or whatever. But you know, just go in with the goal of just killing it on the audition, and just, you know, show your heart, show who you are as a vocalist, and not saying, you know, don't color things and what have you, but also, you know, just be you personally, but also be you vocally. Find a sound that's yours. You know, it can be within the genre, and it can be authentic to the genre, but you know, still be you. But good luck. Yeah, definitely. Landslide's not an easy song to do, and be just either Stevie Nicks or Dixie Chicks imitator. Yeah. Ah, sorry, guys. Oh man, I always fall behind. Okay, I'm going to use my finger, so it's going to look really, really weird. Because when I scroll down, it doesn't really work very well. Let's see. Jose asks, how to elevate our soft palate? Um, to me, I just do the inhale. This feeling of air rushing into the whole vocal tract. To me, that's enough to elevate the soft palate. Um, there, I don't know if you sing in classical styles or if you sing in contemporary styles, but in classical styles, there's definitely a little bit more of a lofting of the soft palate. Oh, oh. To me, it gets a little bit more of the yawny kind of stretch that we get when we do the incipient yawn. There's definitely the soft palate gets up and out of the way, and I can feel that stretch of the soft palate. But then you get that that really darkened kind of sound. So you just, you know, you want to be careful with that. If you sing in contemporary styles, I wouldn't really worry about it too much unless you're actually dealing with issues with nasalence, with nasal resonance that you don't want. Otherwise, the soft palate is usually not a problem for singers, at least not a significant problem. Um, I will sometimes hear the soft palate a little bit low, and you'll hear like a little bit of a muffled, like singing into a pillow kind of sound. Other than that, I mean, I do like that inhaled, like a hard K, but it's really, and all it does is kind of flick the soft palate away from the tongue as they separate. But beyond that, I think, you know, thinking multi-directionally with the throat expansion, thinking, you know, up and down, right? Up for the soft palate, down for the larynx, thinking, you know, east to west here with the pharyngeal constrictor muscles releasing, and then thinking, you know, front to back here with the tongue root leaning up against the front wall of the throat and having space this way as well. I think some of it's just up here and how we're thinking about it and how we're structuring our instrument to make the sounds that we want. Chris, oh, hi, nice to see you. It has been a while. Ansley, I'm also working on expressing the text and not pushing the sound. Any advice on this? Oh, advice in general and like trying out for something like this. Yeah, I don't have a lot of advice for trying out except for like what I said before is just, you know, vocally be yourself. That's ultimately what they want to, what will make you stand out, I think, from other people is you not trying to be an imitator, right? Not trying to sound like so and so. But I think, I mean, if you think about, if you ask yourself the question, what makes you stop and like stop in your tracks when you hear a singer? What makes you just want to listen to that singer? Stop what you're doing and listen. You know, for me, there are definitely colors and textures. I mean, the song choice is huge, and you know, you're picking a good song. The song choice is huge, and the emotion behind it. And I think when I hear singers who really understand and are in touch with the emotions, I think that's when you hear all those really cool colors and textures coming out in their voices. So my biggest recommendation when I'm working with students, helping them for auditions, not so much for American Idol, but you know, it could be for musical theater programs in university. You know, I've got a couple of students who work professionally in musical theater, and when we're preparing for auditions, the big thing I think is just being able to get them in touch with the lyrics and the emotions behind the lyrics, and we talk about the story, what's going on, what has led up to this moment in which the singer or the character is singing the song, and how would you feel in that situation, and just imagine the what's going on, and really making that, like, personalizing that emotion. And so with this, I would go through the lyrics and I'd think about it. I'd like, this is what we used to do in high school, right? In high school English, we'd go through it line by line, and whether it was a poem or some another literary work, we would go through and we would analyze it. And it's like, well, why that choice of word? What does that word mean? What is the author saying when he or she picked that word? And it sounds like it's really academic, but what it does is it helps us to understand the writer. It helps us understand the composer and also the character a little bit more, because writers very often choose words. They're very selectively about sex. Choose words very selectively. They want to find the right words. They want to find the right phrases to really reflect that emotion or the story. So that's my big thing, I think, is just really being able to personalize and get in touch with the emotion, because when you do that, you'll be able to emote more effectively. And like I said, those colors and textures, when you're in touch with the emotions, they will come out more effectively in your voice. Jennison, again, I apologize if I'm butchering your name. As I said, I'm 69 and think I may be requiring some special cares with my voice and vocal folds, for instance, if compared to a younger person. Oh, does an older person? Okay. So I wasn't sure if you were talking about age. I didn't want to assume that. But yeah, I think it depends. I mean, you're kind of sort of an avocational singer. So from what I gathered, I know you said you're taking lessons as well, but so that means you're probably not using your voice as much as a professional would be. So you will probably find that it takes you a little bit longer to solidify certain coordinations. But other than that, I think the same practices that younger singers use, older singers can, but you just need to, I would say, be realistic about how quickly you're going to learn something and how strong your instrument is going to be, because over time there are definitely changes that happen to our vocal instruments. The vocal folds become thicker and less flexible, especially if we haven't been using them all the time to their fullest and always stretching them and always tensing them and making sure that, they've got the strength as well as the flexibility in them. So you may find that it's just like the rest of our bodies, right? That we're maybe not as flexible as we used to be, and just taking care, just making sure that you've got a lot of warm up time, and that anything that you're learning to do, you just, you take your time with it. You learn gradually. You really listen to your voice. You listen to your body. What is your body telling you? But I mean, depending on how healthy your instrument is, don't feel like you have to handle it with kid gloves necessarily. I know a lot of singers in their 60s who have incredibly healthy, strong instruments, and they're not professional singers. I've worked with a number of singers in their 60s, actually, and they're always amazed and surprised by how much their voices are able to do and how strong and healthy they actually are. So, yeah, I don't really know you. I don't really know your voice, but just, I think it's the same advice I'd give to everybody, is just pay attention. Pay attention to what your voice is telling you. And I'm going to use my finger again. Excuse me, I'm not trying to be rude. Let's see. So Janet says, good luck to Ansley. Just for when I perform covers, the falsetto. Is it the falsetto? The highest I go to is like F5 for a take. Yeah, so that's like a mezzo range, I would say. And I don't know if it's really that important. It's the falsetto, but that's kind of where you're at right there. What tips can you? My highest note is now G5. Yeah, that's a perfectly respectable high note for a guy. All right. What tips can you give for singing in a recording studio, please? Only I'm seriously consider booking a recording studio experience for myself. So it's been a long time since I've been in a recording studio, to be honest, but I have done some recording, and I even recorded some backup vocals back in Canada for a couple bands. I I think it depends, I guess. I'm assuming you'll know the music going in. You will have rehearsed it. So I think I would say even being prepared going in is having your vocals ready, having knowing the song inside out is to the best of your ability, because that will save you time and money in the studio. One of the things that I've always done is I've always recorded, a run through of the song just to shake off the nerves, just to kind of like, okay, pull off the band-aid and just do it. That's always been really helpful, is to just record it one time through and then just kind of throw it away. Or if it wasn't 100% terrible, I would actually have them play it back over the speakers, and it would give me information about what I need to tweak. And then that also saves me time and money, because rather than just going over the same song and then finding when we're getting ready to actually mix stuff that it's there's not really as much good stuff as I thought there would be. But just the usual stuff, right? Obviously, hydrate really, really well long before you get there. Be hydrating all day. Warm up. A lot of us skip the warm ups when we're recording, but you want to make sure you warm up. And so, yeah, like prep stuff. Having a really good night's sleep, I've always found, is really, really helpful, before before doing any kind of performance. I would say that recording in the studio, I mean, there are some differences between that and live, especially you don't have the energy of the audience, which means that I find sometimes when singers are in the recording studio, is they're not singing it as though somebody's listening. They're kind of just singing it to themselves, and so their energy is a little too low, and their emotions aren't quite all fully expressed. So that would be another piece of advice. Let's see, Matt. I looked up the basso you talked about. I'm singing a lot of lower baritone and bass, and I'm grateful that you have helped me grow more comfortable with my baritone. Shows up a lot of my operatic voice. Yeah, I mean, again, finding, I think it's key, finding who you really are vocally, finding yourself. And once you stop fighting that's when you find your voice, and that's when you find the repertoire that really brings out the best things about your voice and that makes you feel most confident. And then when you do that, your voice just starts to shine. It just starts to become this whole other thing, this whole other amazing thing that you really weren't expecting even. Fahim, that's good to hear. Glad you're doing well. I had a new breakthrough in my singing. I don't have that many issues with my upper passaggio. That's good. That's good, Fahim. Yeah. Yeah, I'm always amazed that I don't really hear the spasmodic dysphonia in your voice, which is amazing, because I've worked with a couple students in the past with spasmodic dysphonia, and definitely it was such a huge struggle. And I know you've been working really hard on building the strength into your sound and such. That's really amazing that you've been able to do that. I think it's a really special thing. So congratulations on that. That's amazing. Matt, question: have you heard of Basso Profundo? I have heard of Samuel. Yeah, I have, but I don't really. I mean, I don't really follow the basses a lot. So again, if you want to have discussions, I can put you in touch with people like Dan Mitten, who probably are a lot more familiar with basses than I am, operatic basses. I like singing along with him. Good. Pay attention to what that singer is doing. Pay attention to the vowels that he's singing and how he's singing his vowels and how much resonance he has and how much ring is in the voice and how he's tuning his resonance and such. That's a good way for you to kind of learn, and in a good way, rather than just kind of mimicking, just really analyzing what he's doing. Absolute lowest of low. Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of answering the question you were asking, Matt. But yeah, that's like a profound bass. It's very low. But yeah, I'm not so sure that Matt is down there, but I think might be on the lower side. Jason, yes, 100%. I have that sound. Oh, I'm making falsetto. Yeah, like what you said. What? Oh, you're very welcome. So, in that case, Jason, this is what I would suggest doing: is you probably need to be able to figure out a way to reduce the constrictor tensions and match the airflow and the glottal resistance efforts. So that's where I would generally recommend straw phonation. phonating into a straw, taking a cup of water, not quite this full, I'd go like 1.5 inches, and then stick the straw only about 1/2 inch in, and then just to hold it in place, like just, put your hand on the straw there, and doing glissandos and scales and such. And over time, this won't happen immediately, but over time, what will happen is the vocal instrument will start to find a different efficiency and a different balance. And then as you start to alternate between straw and no straw, is that you'll start to be able to, the instrument will go through periods where it remembers for longer and longer and longer how it's supposed to be coordinating. But initially it won't recall once you take the straw out. It'll go right back to its squeezed, constricted self, its usual way of doing things. And then, you over time, it'll be like it'll remember it for part of the exercise or something, and or even just a few notes, and then it'll go back to its pre-straw exercise way of doing things. I'm sorry, I did not explain that very well. But it's one of those things that it teaches a different coordination and different balance that your instrument will not necessarily recall, and it won't stick right away necessarily, but it will over time the more you do it. So that's what I would recommend, is that humming, any kind of semi-occluded phonation, sustained V's, right, where you have the V, that also creates that positive back pressure, which kind of helps to release those throat constrictor muscles. It's really hard to squeeze against that positive back pressure. And then again, it squares up the vocal folds, creates less pressure differential between the supraglottal spaces and the subglottal spaces. It's really nerdy stuff, but that's what I would suggest doing, is finding the balance, because there's obviously some sort of hyperfunction going on there. Somehow you've compensated, and that's become your default strategy for the higher range. So it'd be good to be able to work through that and then build a falsetto from a healthier place. Matt, yeah, Cockney, it's basically a guy who sings really, really low. I'm obviously not a really low singer. Luca, nice to see you. Are you also new? I don't know if you've ever left a comment or question before. When I inhale, do I have to completely relax my tummy, or do I have to pull my lower abs inside? So when you inhale, be relaxed. See, I mean, define relax. I mean, you shouldn't really be feeling a lot of tension anywhere as you're inhaling. Usually that's the point at which the muscles stretch, right? So we tend to feel this sense of like letting go in some ways. You're inflating, but the muscles aren't contracting like they do when we're doing ab workouts, for example. So the only time I ever teach the idea of taking the lower abs, like right above the pubic bone, and slightly tensing them is when we have a tendency to overinflate, overstretch, when you have a compromised abdominal wall like I have, where everything is so lax and the muscles are at a place to begin with. I would say, just slightly, kind of ever so slightly tucking those in. But I think for the most part, if you're getting an all-around, a lateral expansion with the ribs also opening sideways, not everything just being forced forward, all the expansion isn't happening forward, it's happening all the way around. So some in the front, some in the sides, a little bit in the back. You're going to find that everything stays in balance. Hopefully that helps there. 400E Junior. I'd like to improve my vocal range. What kind of exercises do you recommend? It depends on, so there's not really like a real specific set of exercises that I would say, here, this is going to fix your limited vocal range, because like with anything else in singing, you have to get to the bottom of what's limiting your vocal range. Why is it limited? What are you doing? What compensatory techniques are you using that are causing those limitations? So I would say, with that caveat, I would say that the best things to do would be like those siren type exercises that encourage you to go, like the lip rolls, tongue trills, that encourage you to go all the way up and all the way down. That wasn't all the way up or down for me, but that cross the different registers, that stretch the vocal folds, that help us be able to just get everything loose and tuned and such. I think those are really, really big, and I'm assuming you're talking more about improving the upper range, which is what most people are focused on. But you also want to make sure you're stretching the lower range to the extent that it will be stretched. That's really important. But yeah, just any kind of exercises that encourage you to go throughout the range, and the lip tongue trills, those kinds of exercises are great because they use more of a thin edge function of the vocal fold, so you're not getting a lot of vocal weight dragging it down, so you're not as likely to kind of push and pull and force up the scale. But again, you've really got to get to the heart of why it is that your vocal range is limited. Does it have to do with your breath, and does it have to do with your phonation and the glottal resistance efforts, how the vocal folds are coming together? Does it have to do with your vowel and your resonance and such? So many different things that could be standing in your way of really developing that range. Cockney Rebel, my falsetto sounds quite girly. I like that kind of falsetto. Ah! See, whenever I scan, oh man, I gotta keep moving along. I've been at this for an hour, and I need to make sure that we are staying on track here. I'd say, but it's intentional. Yeah, allergies are the worst. Yeah. So I have year-round allergies, and I'm on medication year-round. So it just makes everything really thick, which is the worst because I've just got this constant post-nasal drip. It's there all the time. So like half the edits in my videos are because I'll be talking, and then all of a sudden some gunk will like sit on the vocal folds, and I'd be like, yeah. So it's not quite that bad, but it's really annoying though. Those shows are indeed evil. Yeah, not to discourage Ansley at all. I think it's really kind of cool. I think it can, be a good way to kind of get exposure and experience and to see kind of what it can be like in the industry. Because I think, when you're a singing student and you haven't done that, and maybe you've just done a few little local performances, I don't think you're really completely exposed to everything that goes on in the industry. So I think it's a good way of kind of throwing you into that in some ways. Um, but I mean, don't we love to watch them, generally speaking? And I don't know. I got a little bit disillusioned, I think, by them just because I felt like there was this constant push for singers to have these big, powerful voices. Every singer was, if they didn't have these big money notes, then the judges would just oh, that wasn't as impressive or whatever. And it's just kind of like there are so many different ways to sing, and I just feel like they were trying to create the same kinds of voices. And those who were cast in the show they'd have the token rock singer, they'd have the token country singer, but everybody's kind of in the same sort of vein that sings in the same kind of way. I feel like they all have that kind of Adele-like sound, or like what have you. And that was, I think, the most frustrating thing for me, was seeing that they try to make it look like they appreciate diversity, artistic diversity, but in actuality, I feel like they're really casting and judging to what they perceive as the market or what's most marketable. And I think that's kind of sad, because I think it forces singers to try to be something that they're not necessarily. And that's frustrating. All right, Matt, about the bass singers. Again, I mean, the person to ask would be somebody like Dan Minton, who actually is a bass and would be able to answer that question for you. But if I think about any other bass singers, I'll definitely message you, because I still owe you that message. Tips for singing R&B. All right, I got to keep moving along, guys. So with R&B, it's often softer. There's a lot more. There are a lot more vocals sung in like an M2 coordination. There's a lot more falsetto, especially for guys, and agility. Agility is huge because R&B is just full of all of these runs and riffs and such. That's kind of the signature part of the style, I guess you could say, part of the signature sound. So with agility, the reason why the voices are kind of light is because in order to be able to have that kind of agility, you have to have a degree of lightness in the voice. You can't weigh it down too much. Oftentimes there's a little bit of air in the sound and such, but just working on your agility. And when you're working on those runs and riffs, the biggest challenge that singers face with those is pitch, intonation. And I find it's usually because they're trying to tackle the whole riff in the like at tempo, and rather than breaking it down and slowing things down and doing it in like halftime, for example, so that you can make sure that you're getting everything precise and making sure that your vowel is the same as you move throughout the vocal riff, it's like that sort of thing. But yeah, I guess the runs and riffs are really important with the intonation, I would say. But agility, intonation. Okay, Barry White. Oh, yeah, he's kind of on the lower side too, definitely. Oh, good. Cockney's giving some ideas. That helps a little bit. Let's see, even though again, crammed voice lessons. Oh, hello. You're new. Nice to see you. um, ooh, what do you think of the pharyngeal constrictors being used in timbral coloring? Why not? I think it depends on what you're singing, right? I mean, so there's all that confusion about what pharyngeal voice is, right? And I know Singing Success has their own version of what pharyngeal voice is, and other methods have their own version too. And sometimes it's twang, and sometimes it's not twang, and sometimes it's just that brightness in the sound. Sometimes it's a little bit of nasal resonance. There's so much confusion, so much disagreement even about what it actually means. But I think that when we're singing like in a belt, for example, we narrow the pharyngeal walls a little bit, so we engage those pharyngeal constrictor muscles, which has an effect on resonance and on timbre. So yeah, I don't have a. It's not like, to me, it's just like kind of like it is what it is. It's not like an opinion about or a it's not me saying like passing judgment on it, if that makes sense. But I think that anytime we reshape any part of the vocal instrument, it has an effect on timbre. Anytime we articulate things a certain way, it has an impact on timbre. And yeah, so if it works for us and if it's healthy, then that's fine. Because I think that we can sing with slight constriction, those pharyngeal constrictors being slightly engaged, we'll say, without it being necessarily unhealthy, and it could be sustainable over time. So the basses I normally look up and sing along with are Christian Southern Gospel basses. Yeah, those guys are usually on the lower side too. They're good examples. Pop ones. And pass through a lot of these comments here. Solid advice on vocal aging. Oh, thank you so much. Ansley, yes, I've been on the live chat before. I feel like though Fleetwood Mac was primarily a rock band, Landslide is more pop driven. Yeah, I guess yeah, yes. I always feel like they were kind of like a genre neutral. So because they did kind of dip into like country folk and like pop, and I wouldn't necessarily say rock, but yeah, they have like little rock bits there too. So they're sort of chameleons a little bit. Pop is really my style, not rock, and that's fine. I mean, you could take a rock song and make it into pop. It's fine. Um, let's see. They're both lovely to sing. Shaka Khan and Shirley. Yeah, great examples of voices aging like mine. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that like if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So I know a lot of voices that are just amazing still in their 60s and even 70s, where sometimes they notice that their range drops just a little bit, but otherwise their voices still sound amazing. They're in control. They can still do just about everything they used to be able to do. A lot of it is really just about using it and just always exercising the voice, always keeping it strong and keeping it stretched and flexible. That's the most important thing with aging. Ainsley, so when I'm singing it, I'm trying to stay true to pop vowel coloring. Yeah. Yeah. And that auto tune. That's true. Yeah, auto tune. God bless auto tune. Question: in the exhale for good support, I should keep the ribs expanded and work with the lower abs. Is that right? Will this help me not to tighten my throat? Oh, Yet again, so much disagreement, Luca, on that. I think, and some would disagree with me because it's more of a classical approach where the vocal phrase is much longer. I generally, when I'm singing something, a longer phrase, and when I'm singing something really heavy, really high, I actually do keep my lower ribs expanded a little bit. And I rely more on the abdominal muscles to support, we'll say. But I think it honestly, it differs from person to person. It differs a little bit from style to style. Our bodies are all slightly different. I know that I have to compensate for the compromised abdominal wall that I have. And so I have my own ways of connecting with my breath. So yeah, so when you say the lower abs, I mean, I don't really focus a lot on the low abs. I focus more on when I feel the support and the connection. A lot of my students feel it the same way as more of these obliques and transverse muscles, more so than the rectus muscle. I find that the rectus muscle tends to be more of a forceful thrusting in, which is what I generally discourage. So we tend to feel a lot more the connection here, and these muscles are kind of fighting that rib expansion a little bit. The rib expansion is kind of mitigating the pressures. But then, if we're singing something that requires a high subglottal pressure, how we're going to support is going to be a little bit different. When I'm belting something, I'm not necessarily thinking of keeping the ribs open. When I'm singing a high sustained tone that isn't necessarily belt, but let's say it's more head voice, but it's louder head voice, I will keep the ribs open. But so I won't say that there is like a one size fits all, and I won't say that there is just one way of connecting with your breath, because it really depends on the needs of the vocal phrase. I'm sorry that doesn't really give you a very clear answer, but I think generally if you need to sing longer, if you need to conserve your breath, then you need to keep that rib expansion a little bit. If you need to create a higher subglottal pressure, you need to engage the abdominal wall a little bit more. That doesn't necessarily mean that you wouldn't keep the ribs open. It depends, again, on how high that subglottal pressure is. So I think that's really important. All right, my kids are going to start making a lot of noise now, so I might need to get going. I have a job now. Oh, good. Congratulations on the job, Chris. Matt. Oh, man. Sorry, like poking at you guys. Pretty much going to have to save up for voice lessons if I'm going to be serious. It's not even just saving up. I mean, if you think about it, let's say the voice lesson in your area is $60 an hour, right? That's a few hours of extra work maybe that you could pick up somewhere. Or some teachers will still do like a trade or barter kind of scenario where, for childcare, or, hey, if you mow my lawn or whatever, I will give you a voice lesson. I think that, again, there are creative ways to get around financial challenges when it comes to getting the things that we want, paying for the things that we want. I mean, I don't think that my mortgage company would be very open to that, trading voice lessons for my mortgage payment. But when it comes to something like voice lessons, you may find that the singing teacher is willing to work out something with you. So don't be afraid to ask. Like, don't be afraid to say, hey, I have a financial need. And I know some singing teachers who have scholarships, who actually give students discounts and things like that. So again, if you really, really want this badly enough, I think you will find a way to make it happen. Even if it means getting a little extra work or doing something creative to make the money. Using straw phonation for 6+ months, I've finally gotten down to 3.5 millimeter cocktail straw. Wow, it's very small. Maybe the voice is really stubborn. I blame puberty. Puberty is at fault for everything, really. So, you know what, Jason, I would send me something. Send me a video. I would love to see a video, because then I can see what's going on alignment wise and such too, because that's really critical. If your head's out of alignment, if your neck's out of alignment, that is going to affect the laryngeal muscles and how they respond. So yeah, send me something so I can get an idea. Preach. I feel like we're in church. All right. Wow, it's getting pretty late, guys. I'm gonna have to wrap up soon here. Apparently, riffs and runs are easier for females to perform due to their high voices. It could be the high voices, and it could be just generally speaking that women don't have the same muscle bulk, we'll say. Generally speaking, our voices are a little bit lighter just naturally. Obviously, there are women, there are exceptions. There are women who do have very weighty voices. But I think that also helps a little bit. And I think some of it too is the pitch range, but also um, gender. I think there are things related to gender, and oftentimes I find R&B singers, male R&B singers, are singing up in falsetto, so they're singing up in like the female range basically, whereas women are generally singing in their middle range and such, so that it's a different kind of coordination, and it's an easier area of the range in some ways. Although some guys find falsettos easier than like mixed voice. Um, but then I think there's also some cultural stuff related to gender and just the expectations of the voice. And I know so many guys who would just, they grew up thinking that guys aren't supposed to be able to sing. Like it's just most guys can't sing. It's girls can sing, but guys can't sing. So I think there's a lot of stuff that we fight psychologically, mentally, as well as physiologically that can make it harder for us, along the way. That's what I've heard anyway. Hey, I think there's a lag. My questions might end up out of context. Okay, thank you for acknowledging the inconsistencies of pharyngeal voice. We need to standardize terminology, but I'm not sure. I get into these discussions because I'm on a lot of forums with singing teachers, and I'm not sure that we will ever get to do that. Every time somebody comes along with something that they think is going to clarify the terminology and it's going to unite singing teachers, it just causes a lot more confusion. So what I do is I try to present the vocabulary. I try to be very open-minded about it, and I try to offer different options in terms of vocabulary. And when I'm working one-on-one with my students, we come up with our own vocabulary, something that makes sense for them, our own language. It's usually not much different from what I would use here on a video, but understanding, like I want to know that what they are, how they're understanding that particular term, that particular thing. So when we understand each other, I think then everything becomes clearer. Sorry, we have a little boo-boo to deal with here. All right, let's see. Wrap up any questions that are left. It's hot in here. All right. Matt, bear in mind that the senior suggested we are low berries, and thanks for bringing up the sustainability of pharyngeal constriction. Yeah, I think it's one of those things. It's like there's always that balance between narrowing and constriction. So we're saying for pharyngeal constrictors, excuse me, the only reason why we're saying that is because the pharynx doesn't have any muscles that open it up. The only muscles that it has are constrictor muscles, and they're used to kind of help push the food down. So I think that kind of, when you hear the word constriction, it sounds very scary and it sounds like it's unhealthy. But I mean, we constrict those muscles all day long every time we swallow. So I think that's really important to understand. And we either engage them or we don't. And yeah. There's a big difference between narrowing and constricting, I think. So I would say in this case, we're narrowing the pharyngeal tube as opposed to constricting, because to me, constricting always has that kind of negative connotation, like we're tensing, straining, forcing, that sort of thing. Let's see. All right, looks like we might be coming to the end. So many berries. Oh, good. Lots of things here. I love the diversity of perspectives and vocal backgrounds that your answers acknowledge. I hope to catch you again. Oh, yeah. Oh, you're heading out. Yeah, please say hi. Say hi again. It's always good to chat with other teachers and such. See, Jean made it right near the end there. The voice teacher I want to see is charging $25 per lesson for 45 minutes. That's a really good price, Matt. Honestly, that's way lower than the national average, just so you know. Yeah, that's not bad at all. So $25, if you think about it, how long would you have to work for minimum wage even? What, maybe 3 hours? So if you got yourself a job for 3 hours a week and pick up something extra, even if it's like babysitting. I know guys don't often think of babysitting, but or dog walking. Oh my gosh, I had to use. We're going away next week, and I had to look on Rover.com, and those guys make 30, 40, $50 a night. I mean, if you think about it, if you love pets, Rover.com, like there are so many different options for you out there that you can create your income. And that would be nothing, honestly, to earn 3 hours a week. It's not that much money if you really, really want it. Let's see. My brother said I would need to see if his teacher has taught. No, I don't agree. I don't agree, Matt. I mean, I don't know this teacher, but any any good teacher will have an understanding of how to train voices that are not like their own. Okay, I work primarily with male singers. 85% of my students are males. I'm not a male singer. And I would say that of those males, about 75% of them are baritones. And so I actually do really, really well with male singers. I find them easier to teach than female singers. So, but any good singer should know how to train every single voice type. So you can ask if that person has a lot of experience and feels comfortable teaching. But in general, that shouldn't really make a difference. I'd be more interested in finding out what styles that teacher sings and repertoire and what that teacher's experience is, and learning to be able to help somebody with their vocal goals, reach their goals. Was playing guitar at a car wash kept quiet. That's an interesting performance for a Sunday. That's funny. All right. You write books. Well, there you go. What kind of books? Sorry, guys, I have to poke again. You write books for a living. Well, there you go. Find a way to use your writing skills. Maybe go on to like what used to be Elance and now it's I think Upwork. Editing or writing short whatevers for a certain fee. Honestly, you could create your own opportunities. I'm very entrepreneurial. I love the idea of creating our own income and using whatever gifts we've been given to increase our earning potential. And you can definitely find ways to make that happen. Think about the things that you're. Can you plug it back in, please? Oh, sorry, a little dark there. There we go. I was wondering what happened. Yeah, you can find ways to use the gifts that you've been given creatively. And when a creative, I mean just thinking outside the box of working for somebody else, thinking outside of that box of showing up for somebody else on their schedule and accepting whatever pay they offer you. If you're creative, you will find different ways to make that happen. In Christian books, interesting. I found women easier to work with than men. That's funny because they're more polite to the opposite gender. maybe, maybe. I actually find that generally is true. Which I don't know why that is, but I feel like I know some other male teachers who love working with females too. They just have an appreciation for the female voice, but I feel like a lot of teachers really they look at the male voice as being the problem child. So, and I love problem children. So, I love being able to figure out things and do the detective work and figure out what's going on. And I think the reason why I understand them so well is just because for whatever reason, I've just over the past 12 years worked with so many male singers. And I see the same kinds of issues that they're struggling with all the time. And so I think it's just a matter of just my experience with them, not so much the voice itself. But yeah, all right, guys, this has gone on almost an hour and a half now. So I guess that's probably what happens too when I talk too much and when I only do this once a month. I'm thinking of adding some more impromptu live streams at some point now that I'm hopping on so many times a week with Singwise Academy. It's just becoming kind of like second nature. It's like, oh, time to do a live stream. So I think maybe I'll start doing that here or there when I've got an extra half hour or an hour or something like that during the week between students, and just maybe doing something that's unscheduled. And so if you guys are on at that time, maybe you'll see a little notification pop up or something. But probably should start doing that a little bit more so that we can kind of maybe condense some of our live streams. All right, I am going to before more questions come in, I am going to. Oh, thanks, Sweet Peach. My hair got really frizzy because it's rainy outside, and just before I got on, I took the flat iron. I was trying to desperately to get it so it wasn't quite so frizzy because it's been raining here for like 2 weeks. It's ridiculous, and it's supposed to rain all the way clear through till Saturday. And I was trying to get some work done outside, so yeah, my hair was all frizzy. But thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's always nice to hear. All right, everyone. Have yourselves a good rest of the day. Thank you, Janet. I know you're very quiet, but thank you, Janet, for moderating. I really appreciate it. All right, see you guys soon. Yeah, keep an eye and ear open for the next video. Okay, bye.